Hi, my name is Sanju. I currently own a 2016 C7 Z06. This by far has been my favorite car to date, and part of the reason why being it has all of the big checklists ticked off, essentially, as far as speed, reliability, weight, durability, and of course long-term maintenance. And I can tell you that from my experience driving M cars prior to this car gives me a level of flexibility and adjustment that I've never seen before with regard to any car ownership. The braking is quite simply astounding, in addition to the power that can be harnessed. And that brings me to why I'm at TPC Racing, and of course specifically to DSC Sport, because I believe there was a whole lot of improvement that was required with this car. You know, some of the initial C7 Z06 owners complained about how twitchy this car was. We saw that at different tests with Motor Trend as an example. And there was complaints about the car being loose. And that's when I ran into Mike Levitas here, of course, at our local Cars and Coffee, and explained to me how important setup was with regard to these cars. For better or for worse, a lot of the alignment that comes out of the factory tends to be inconsistent, and inconsistent from a standpoint of experiences that vary from driver to driver. What Mike was able to explain to me was it was one of two things that needed to be done with these cars. Set up for the right toe curve. The caster had to be set up, which is something that factory alignments really don't capture. And unfortunately, a lot of the GM dealers that folks run into have no idea about how to set the caster right, in addition to not having a tool that's necessary. Mike was able to certainly address that issue by creating a custom setup for the C7 and specifically the Z06, which has been public knowledge for a while. But again, because I'm local to Mike, I was able to, of course, get my alignment set up the way it should be. The biggest change for this car is going to be replacing the stock suspension module with the DSC module, which has a wide range of parameters that I think it's something that cannot be harnessed unless you really know your suspension in terms of how to massage it to what it needs to be. And Mike has been great about educating everybody about it, and he's been at the forefront of making sure that this module can give a level of capability when married to the correct setup, to the right setup, to provide an experience that is unmatched. And the more important thing is completely taking out fear as a factor when driving this car. It has a lot of power. The whole point of this is to put the power down. Of course, as with any other C7, and the controls really don't change with this car. What I do have or had before the DSC unit was the MagnaRide calibration update from GM. So this is a great validation test in terms of how the suspension changes based on GM's best out-the-box or quote-unquote canned tune that was available for a lot of the owners versus how DSC can really change it, and this is based on a default mode. As with any other C7, there are a number of different modes. We're right now in Touring, which is a default, but of course I can switch it by going to the left to Eco or Weather, which we're not going to use for the time being, right? So in addition to all of these different technologies that are available for the driver, this car has now DSC, which is really going to define how we can have all of these engineering factors that have gone into this car from a chassis standpoint, from a power standpoint, being married to a new suspension module, which should make a huge difference with regard to what my experience is going to be. Oh my God. Wow. This car just hooks right off the get-go in first gear. There's no slop in the suspension. And this is track mode, of course. It's great. I mean, there's no hopping around, there's no slop. Wow. And this was me being cynical before, but right off the gate, track mode. Wow. Yeah, there's no spin. It's right on point. It just squats and shoots. Holy cow. I mean, right off the get-go, I'm in love with this car all over again. This wasn't something I expected. Even with the MRC update, it would take at least a half a second to hook up and just shoot. But with this car, My throttle is my best friend at this point. My experience isn't, you know, it's not affected by the fear in the back of my mind at this point. And the reason I started off in track mode was to see how DSC would help me in the most aggressive setting. And this is not even going into the performance traction management modes. This is just us having a short drive, you know, the back roads, which is something that I do 90% of the time. Wow. It's just phenomenal. And look at that, it just soaks up the bumps. The rebound is just absolutely phenomenal. The reason I braked so hard was to kind of figure out how the car would react under braking, and there was no nosedive. It just sat. Worth every penny.